Distinguished guests, please welcome the President and Chief Executive Officer of the Detroit Regional Chamber, Sandy Baruah.
All right, welcome. Welcome, welcome. We're so delighted that you are all here for the 44th annual Mackinac Policy Conference. 44 years. And we're delighted that you continue to make the trek. Planes, trains, automobiles, ferries, bicycles, whatever it takes to get here, you guys do it, and we are so incredibly grateful. And one of the reasons why this conference continues to work after 44 years is because of this incredibly unique location. It is inconvenient for everybody. It is the Switzerland of Michigan. And that is why Michigan Center Stage works so well. Now, of course, we could not do this without our amazing sponsors. And the biggest thanks of all goes to Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan. For over 50 years, Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan has been such a stalwart supporter of the right causes in the state, the region, and of course, with the Detroit Regional Chamber and this particular conference. We greatly appreciate their lead sponsorship, and we look forward to welcoming their CEO, Tricia Keith, to this stage tomorrow. And our Ruby sponsors just continue to grow. It's our biggest crop of Ruby sponsors ever. So my sincere thanks to Clark Hill Public Strategies, DTE Energy, Huntington Bank, KPMG, and the Ralph C. Wilson Jr. Foundation for their incredible and generous support. We also have a record number of platinum sponsors. Now, in all, the 2025 Mackinac Policy Conference has a total of 95 sponsors, ranging from firms recognized around the globe like Amazon, Ford Motor Company, General Motors, UPS, Rocket, Strategic Staffing Solutions, financial services firms like Community Financial, PNC Bank, and those who keep us healthy and warm, like Consumers Energy, Corewell Health, and the Michigan Health and Hospital Association. Those who entertain and inspire us, the Detroit Pistons, and our friends and partners at the MEDC and right here at the Grand Hotel. Let's acknowledge all 95 of our incredible and generous sponsors. What also makes this conference work is civility and cooperation. No doubt we live in polarized times. But here, for these 3 days on this island, we look for the things and we celebrate the things we can do together. We also look for and celebrate civility and humanity. For indeed, it is harder to be uncivil with somebody, even if you disagree with them, once you get to know them. And what better place to get to know somebody than this conference and this island? And just like last night, I got to know Ambassador Rudd quite well. It is the best place to get to know someone you haven't already met before. And our political environment has changed dramatically in a dramatically short period of time. Now, as my limited hairline shows, I've been around for a while. I am old enough to remember very clearly a time when things like conservative Democrats and liberal Republicans were actually a thing. Politicians of all stripes had at least some incentive to appeal to the middle of the political spectrum. When Ronald Reagan was elected president, 67% of all congressional districts were considered competitive. In other words, where both sides had a reasonable shot of winning that congressional seat. Fast forward to today, and it's less than 40% of congressional districts that are competitive. And as we all know, that makes the primary, not the general, the most important election. And in the primary, it is either a race to the right or a race to the left, because they're not appealing to the broad base of voters, they're appealing to the 12% or 15% of eligible voters that show up to the primary election. And when people think about why we have such polarized politics, that's a prime reason. Complicating this growing polarization in our nation is trying to keep track of what is a Republican and what is a Democrat. Now, it sounds like a simple question, but back in the day, the more educated or wealthier you were, the more likely you were to be a Republican. Today, that dynamic has completely been flipped on its head. As recently as the Clinton presidency, Republicans held a 5 percentage point advantage in holding college degrees. Today, Democrats have a whopping 10-point advantage in college degrees. 9 out of the 10 wealthiest congressional districts are now represented by Democrats, and a majority of the nation's poorest congressional districts are now represented by a Republican. This is a sea change in just a generation or so. And there's another change occurring in our political environment. It used to be that your view of the economy was largely shaped your view of the sitting president. In other words, if you thought the economy was doing well, unemployment was good, inflation wasn't bad, GDP was growing at a reasonable clip, you thought the sitting president was doing at least an okay job. Today, this dynamic has flipped. Your support, or lack of support, of the sitting president is what drives people's opinion of the economy today. The Chamber's latest polling with our polling partner, the Glenn Gariff Group, which just dropped on Tuesday, highlights this striking difference in stark detail. In just 3 months, from our January poll, statewide poll, to our April poll, Democrats' expectation of a recession have skyrocketed 30 points. And in that same period of time, Republicans' expectations of a recession have dropped by half. Now, yes, there's a lot of noise about economic policy these days, and goodness, we're going to dive into that on this stage here. But we really haven't seen a lot of major data swings in key metrics such as unemployment or inflation or GDP just yet. Yet, each party is viewing the situation and the data very, very differently. Let's take a look at the question, is our economy growing? Again, from our January poll to our April poll, Democrats have dropped from 60% who view the economy growing to well under 20%, just in that short period of time. And the Republicans, as you can see highlighted here, the numbers are almost exactly the opposite, almost to the number. This is the policy and political environment we find ourselves in as we meet here at the Grand Hotel. And we need to find a way to chart a path forward, knowing that we are Republicans, we're Democrats, and frankly, a growing cadre of independents. The policy decisions in Washington impact us here as much as the policy decisions in Lansing do. It's important to understand that our impact on trade and business relationships that are made at the national level are having an outsized impact here in Michigan. We are a border state with Canada. Canada is our largest trading partner. Our manufacturing, agricultural, technology, and service firms are at greater risk with trade disruption and tariffs than just about any other state in the nation. Our automotive and mobility companies have built not just a bilateral, but an international supply chain finely honed over a century. And these capital-intensive industries cannot quickly reroute these supply chains. It is difficult, and they are finely tuned. On the EV front, our firms have spent billions of dollars to prepare for and to compete in this global trend moving towards greater electrification of the vehicle fleet. In that effort to be competitive in the 21st century and the $1 billion that have been spent, what happens now with changing policies at the national level regarding electrification? Have those billions of dollars gone wasted? We have to wait and see. Now, Michigan, as we know, we're a big state. 10th largest state by population in the country. We are an important state politically. We're also a purple state. And as recent elections show here in Michigan, Michigan can swing right or left. Now, there's obviously opportunity in being a purple state, but there's also peril. Policy consistency is difficult, right? And if we can align on a handful of things that drive our state forward, if we can get some alignment between the parties and our leaders around educational achievement and 21st century skills, economic development policy, building on our high-tech manufacturing and mobility base, we can move Michigan forward, but it's hard. If it were easy, we would have done it already. And we have a terrific lineup of thought leaders, policy wonks, thinkers and doers to help us think through and how to navigate these really uncertain and polarized times. We'll also get a view from high-profile working diplomats, and we'll get, of course, the view from our elected leaders of their plans to move Michigan forward. We can do this. We have done this. I mean, let's applaud Governor Whitmer, Speaker Hall, and President Trump for the bipartisan effort that led to the hugely important news of the new fighter wing at Selfridge Air National Guard Base. That is a huge... That is bipartisanship. That is people doing their jobs and getting the right result. We can learn from this example. This is the equation for impact. Our great theme set forth by our conference chair, Peter Quigley, and his team at Kelly. Now, as I said, none of this is easy. If it were, we wouldn't have to focus on it for 3 days on an island. Have a great conference, everyone, and I'm anxious for you to hear from all of our speakers and guests and our conference chair, Peter Quigley, in just a few moments. Thank you all.
Please welcome the President and Chief Executive Officer of Kelly and Chair of the 2025 Mackinac Policy Conference, Peter Quigley.
Thank you. Thank you, Sandy, and good afternoon, everyone. Great to be here. Thank you to the Detroit Chamber for putting on another great agenda for us this year. Thank you especially to Tammy Kernreich, who we'll celebrate later, who's just done a phenomenal job, great impact on this conference. And thank you to my wife, Nancy, who I've known for 52 years, and she's been married to me for 40 of them, and she's been at my side the entire time, so thank you, sweetheart. I'm really grateful to the Chamber membership and the Board of Directors for their commitment to this conference that's been gathering here for, as Sandy said, 44 years, which is a tribute to the Chamber and all of you who attend. It's the most successful business conference, policy conference in the country, and I'm honored to be this year's chair. The shoes I have to fill are big. Last year's conference chair, and stylish shoes at that, I'm sure, who is also this year's Chamber Board Chair, Suzanne Schenk, who has been my guide and mentor throughout the year. So thank you, Suzanne, appreciate it. I must admit, I was a little reluctant when the board and the chamber approached me about being the chair because of the titans of industry that have preceded me. But Sandy closed the deal when he pulled me aside and said, "Peter, you know this is a temporary job." And I should have reminded Sandy at the time that at Kelly we actually pay our temporaries. The reason this conference is so successful for so many years is because of you, the 1,500 or so attendees that gather on this beautiful island every year and deal with the most pressing economic and political issues facing our country, our state, our region. So thank you for that. Appreciate that you're here because you are what makes this conference so vital and so important. Now, some of you may also attribute the success to the fact that we're not shy about pouring a cocktail or two. But regardless of the success factors, you're joined by CEOs, other business leaders, entrepreneurs, politicians, educators, philanthropists, journalists in the audience and on stage. And so we'll do our best to make the most of all of the attendees because they will make up the conversations you'll hear about over the course of the next few days. And I think it's the diversity of thought that makes this conference so compelling, so vibrant. And somehow this year, though, feels a little bit different. Maybe it's the 152 executive orders and counting. But we're convening national and statewide leaders at a time when every organization in Michigan is dealing with challenges that are in some cases existential. Businesses are dealing with the flurry of regulations, including tariffs and geopolitical conflicts. Workers, meanwhile, are worried about job security and the cost of living. You've got government who are facing political challenges that threaten investments in education and infrastructure. Educators are dealing with an unprecedented amount of intrusion into their operations, challenges to funding levels, and everybody is dealing with challenges that are unique and unprecedented. So during this time of radical change, deep polarization, the meeting here at this island could not be more important and valuable. So thank you for being here. The fact that you're here is a testament to the fact that you want to make a positive impact on Michigan. Impact, that's the word of the day. That's the word of the week. Our theme that we centered on for this year is Michigan's equation for impact, vision plus tools times action. Unlike my daughter, who's a Michigan teacher, God bless all teachers, I don't teach math, but I do believe this is the formula for moving our state forward. Whether you're a business or a civic leader, an employer or a job seeker, an educator or a student, I think Michiganders are united in our desire to make Michigan the best place to work and live. We want Michigan to be competitive. We want it to be the preferred destination for job seekers and families and businesses alike. We want Michigan to be a place where vision and tools meet action to make a positive impact for the future. And I'm convinced that in Michigan's equation for impact, the X factor is talent. At Kelly, we support large and small businesses, and we see every day that talent is what drives innovation and growth. Anything is possible with the right person, with the right skills, in the right motivation, in the right job. full stop. And I believe that with our abundant economic and natural resources, Michigan can win the battle for talent. So let's make conversations about how we attract, retain, develop talent a key part of this year's conference. But talk alone cannot solve our challenges. We heard that message loud and clear when the governor, during her State of the State address in February, implored us to focus on results. We need to follow the governor's lead and make action, make results part of every conversation we're having at this week's conference. But let me be clear, the equation for impact is not hypothetical. It happens every day across our state. The NFL draft, the thriving startup ecosystem in Western Michigan, Sandy mentioned Selfridge Air Force Base, and Detroit's population growth. That's impact. When we create the conditions for those kinds of results, that's when we have a positive impact, and that's how we propel our state forward. And this year's conference agenda is rich with opportunities for leveraging the equation for impact. I think it's fitting that our opening session and closing session are around the automotive industry, which is so important to our economy. Our first panel includes experts with global experience in manufacturing, R&D, global supply chain, and government policy. And our last session will include an important conversation with Bill Ford and his daughter, Alexandra Ford English, who will give us an idea of what they're doing to lead that iconic Michigan company. And no one can argue about the importance of the automotive industry to our state economy. And to remind you of that fact, we brought you up here in a horse and buggy. And how should we participate, interpret, and shape our national policy debates? We'll check in with Fed Reserve CEO Austin Goolsbee on the latest in monetary policy and the intersection or collision with national politics. We'll explore, among other topics, the confrontation, if you will, of new media and traditional media with S.E. Cupp and April Ryan. And we'll explore what to expect from Washington from our own congressional district, both sides of the aisle, veterans Debbie Dingell and Bill Hazenga, and freshmen Tom Barrett and Kristen McDonald-Rivet. Michigan is a great and important state, as Sandy mentioned. The impact of our state and the impact on our state extends well beyond our borders. So we're delighted to have renowned global risk expert Ian Bremmer with us to frame the geopolitical environment, to add an outside-in perspective, to hear what countries really think of the U.S. We'll welcome former Australian Prime Minister and current ambassador to the U.S., Kevin Rudd, and we're thrilled that newly appointed ambassador to Canada, Pete Hoekstra, is with us today. Ambassador to Canada. Now that's a job description that changed in a hurry. And how great would it be for the city of Detroit, if we were able to reclaim a WNBA franchise? Well, to hear how that pursuit is going, we're going to hear from what could be described as the Legends panel. Business legend Sandy Pierce, who we celebrated last year, Detroit Pistons legend Grant Hill, Detroit Shock legend Swin Cash Canal, and legendary business executive Arn Tellem. And hopefully we can tease out of them what the new name might be. And finally, since we are a chamber of businesses, big or small, how are businesses in Michigan growing, innovating? How are they attracting talent? What are they doing about AI and technology? So we're thrilled to have two panels, one featuring CEOs of 4 of our most successful startups in Michigan, and then also some more established CEOs from Corewell Health, GTE, and Carhartt. And does everybody own a piece of Carhartt branded apparel? And that's just touching the surface. We have a number of hosted sessions on AI, education, economic development, the defense industry, housing, innovation, women in leadership, and the list goes on. So with a really rich agenda, I'm hopeful that we can take vision and marry it with policy to create action, that we can together move the state forward. And it really is about working together to marshal our resources to have greater impact. I would like nothing more than to come back here in 2026 confident that both individually and collectively we've had a positive impact on Michigan. So let's start that today and let's have some fun. Thank you. And now it's my distinct honor and privilege to introduce from the great state of Michigan, our governor, Gretchen Whitmer. Good to see you.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. All right. Thank you, everybody. I'm so glad to be here with all of you. It's good to be back. I hope that you're all enjoying everything that Mackinac Island has to offer, from the refreshing lake breeze to the delicious fudge and the smell of bipartisanship. Haha. This year's theme, the equation for impact, is exciting. And I got an equation for all of you. All of us plus the pink pony equals a lot of fun, right? But in all seriousness, I want to recognize CEO Sandy Baruah and his team at the Detroit Regional Chamber. They do so much work to put this on. It is incredible what they do every single year to bring us together. And I, of course, want to acknowledge Peter Quigley, the president and CEO of Kelly Services, who is this year's conference chair. Speaking of staffing, right? Let's also thank the hotel staff and the staff across the island for all they do. So it has been a heck of a year already. We have a new administration in the White House, a new majority in the Michigan House. We've had attempts to invade Greenland and buy Canada, or wait, is it the other way around? Come on, we gotta laugh at certain times, right? We've had trade policies that have forced us all to crack open our high school economics books and try to explain what a tariff is about 1,000 times. And while a lot has happened at the federal level, and certainly the level of uncertainty and anxiety that we all feel is real, here in Michigan, we've been able to get a lot done. We've secured a game-changing F-15EX fighter mission at Selfridge National Air Guard Base in Macomb County. Lots of people on both sides of the aisle have worked for years to get this done, and I'm thrilled because it protects 30,000 jobs, 5,000 military families, and about $850 million of economic impact every single year. And it's the linchpin to growing our defense sector, which we have been able to make great strides on. We won a federal commitment for the Brandon Road Lock, which is protecting the Great Lakes from invasive carp. And these two wins are big for Team Michigan. It truly is something that is remarkable and crucial. The invasive species that are making their way toward Lake Michigan could devastate our ecosystem and the Great Lakes. And so this is really something that was not the most exciting thing, and people don't necessarily understand what it's all about, but protecting our Great Lakes is something we all get. We enacted a bipartisan, fiscally responsible budget for the current year that's built on our work to put more money in Michiganders' pockets and expand access to education, build up affordable housing, and keep Michiganders safe. We set up an innovation fund and an R&D tax credit to unleash the power of Michigan entrepreneurship. We made a fair deal to raise the minimum wage, establish the best paid sick leave in the country, and protect flexibility for our small businesses. A lot of people didn't think we could do all of that, but we did. When both bases are unhappy, you've probably settled on a decent policy. We signed an executive order to connect more young men to tuition-free higher education and skills training programs. We recognize that there is a gap between women who are taking on these opportunities and men, so we're doing more outreach. And we put together a report examining what Medicaid cuts that are being debated in Washington, D.C. right now would mean to communities, to healthcare, to people all across the state of Michigan, because people need to know what's happening in D.C. is impacting all of us, and that is just one more example. And thanks to all of these things that we have done together, we are making progress. While other states in our country are juggling multi-billion-dollar deficits, Michigan has a surplus. Our rainy day fund is at an all-time high. We've repeatedly been named a top 10 state for doing business, and Detroit's population grew for the second time in nearly 70 years. So no matter what happens in Washington, D.C., we've been a model for effective leadership in Michigan. And we got to take a minute to praise the Lions, the Pistons, and the Tigers, right? You don't realize what a sports team can do for a community and a state until you start winning, and then you see it, and it's exciting. Because we know that we got to work together in order to get things done. This isn't platitude. This is a philosophy. Philosophy of a Michigander, like so many of you, who was raised in a household in this state with a Republican father and a Democratic mother. All right, Dad was a Milliken Republican, so I don't know if that still counts today, and Mom was a Frank Kelly Democrat. And I'm glad to be in a room that where some of you know who those people were. Go to campus and talk about Bill Milliken and Frank Kelly, and you'll get stares. No one knows who I am. And so I've worked with a Republican-led House and Senate for the majority of my time in office. We got all the budgets done on time. I signed over 1,500 bills. And I just think that it's important to remind folks, we work with anyone to solve problems and make a difference for Michiganders. I know so many of my partners in the legislature do feel that same way. I look forward to continuing working with Speaker Hall and Majority Leader Brinks and their caucuses on all the pressing issues that we face. Together, we can do hard things. For me, that's what MPC is all about this year. You'll hear more about that in my keynote, so I hope you will stay tuned. And in the meantime, when you go downtown, don't embarrass the family, as the Whitmers say. Thank you.